We are continuing with the teachings of Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj from the book I Am That. So the questioner asks about the sense of well-being and the mental pleasures, and he says that the source of it must be in reality. But Maharaj says, and I will read his words, he says, they have their roots in imagination. A man who is given a stone and assured that it is priceless diamond will be mightily pleased until he realizes his mistake. In the same way, pleasures lose their tang and pains their barb when the self is known. Both are seen as they are, conditioned responses, mere reactions, plain attractions and repulsions, based on memories or preconceptions. So the whole idea is that pain and pleasure are two sides of the same coin. What seems as pleasure, Maharaj says, its background is pain. Because usually what happens is that pleasure, when it is experienced, it creates a thirst, a sense to experience it more. So there is a sense of craving which comes along with it. So I've had one experience. It can be any sensory, sensual experience. And I want its repetition for fulfillment, for happiness, thinking that if I have one more experience of that sort, I will experience happiness. And the mind at that point, it creates this illusion. It says that only if I have one more fulfillment, I will be happy and satisfied. It does not mean that we should deny the pleasures that are given to us in the moment. Enjoy every pleasure in the moment, accept every pain in the moment. But clinging to pleasure and trying to avoid pain is the part of the same movement. That is exactly what Maharaj is telling us. That this whole pursuit of pleasure to avoid pain is rooted in imagination. So what happens is that we get this idea that to avoid pain, we must indulge in pleasures. So, we engage in different activities, fully knowing that we are avoiding. But that creates the problem because it is a part of the same movements. I will further read what Maharaj says here. Pain and pleasure go always together. Freedom from one means freedom from both. If you do not care for pleasure, you will not be afraid of pain. But there is happiness which is neither, which is completely beyond. So again, Maharaj is pointing to that eternal reality which lights up this interconnected link of opposites, pleasure and pain. And the only possibility to experience that light of beingness, of suchness, is to accept the cycle of the pain and pleasure, but not to cling to anything. And in this very book, in one of the chapters, Nisargadatta Maharaj says that the river of my life flows between the banks of pain and pleasure, but I cling to none. So dualism is when we cling to one side. When we say that I want only pleasure, sometimes the mind clings to pain as well, in a different way. Mind identifies with pain and it creates grandiose gestures in terms of suffering, where it says that my pain is the greatest pain. Nobody understands me. So we create a victim mindset and then we cling on to that. And there is a sense of thrill and enjoyment in doing that as well. But again, it is all pain in disguise. So when the pursuit of one is dropped, the other also disappears. And this dropping away happens through total acceptance, not by avoidance. It is not a matter of force or will, but it is a matter of understanding. When there is understanding, not an intellectual understanding, but a deep understanding, a total understanding that these two forces, this link of opposites, pain, pleasure, good, bad, it's all part of duality. But the underlying unifying principle is one consciousness that remains untouched by what is happening externally. When that is realized or recognized, then there is no chase for pleasure and no avoidance for pain. Whatever moment brings, it is accepted. And in that acceptance is peace, is relief, is the total understanding. Maharaj says, reality is beyond the subjective and objective, beyond all levels, beyond every distinction. Most definitely, it is not their origin, source, or root. These come from ignorance of reality, not from the reality itself, which is indescribable, beyond being and non-being. So when we identify ourselves as the limited mind-body organism, we begin to cling in order to attain fulfillment because we think that we are not whole. So our whole movement then becomes outwards, that I must acquire this, I must attain that, then I will be whole. And that is the mistake. Maharaj is saying your nature is wholeness. You just have to recognize it. That's it. Nothing else needs to be done. And once that recognition happens, this dance of duality, of pleasure and pain, alternating pleasure and pain will automatically be accepted. It is only resistance which causes pain. The problem is that we start believing our objective experience because we keep faith in society. We think that what society is telling us is the truth. But then there is always a contradiction in every culture, every society, every religion. And there is a separate subjective experience which contradicts that. So you may see outwardly that all these things that we do in the name of goodness, but there are a lot of contradictions happening internally. There is a lot of hypocrisy in all of these. And that's where mind gets confused. Whether I should believe the objective experience or should I believe my subjective experience? And Maharaj says that reality is beyond both. Even your subjective experience is shaped more or less by the objective experience, and vice versa. The thing is that the society is constantly changing. Society's values are constantly changing. And based on that change, the perception of the limited entity or me also keeps changing. Yesterday, what was immoral or unethical today may be accepted by the society. And it may again change later on. So these forces, they are subject to constant change. And these forces bring about conditional responses. Pleasure, pain. When my ideas are not accepted, I feel pain. When I don't get what I want, I feel pain. When I get what I want, I feel pleasure. But now I want more. And then when I don't get more, I again feel pain. So you see, this is a never-ending cycle. I want progress, I want growth, I have fancy ideas about life. I want to do work, I want to do hard work and attain this, attain that. But in that process of attainment, in that constant chase, I see myself as completely turbulent. I see that my emotional system gets completely hijacked. And I'm not able to respond to the world properly. Because I'm no more living in presence, I'm living in complete identification with my separation. So that separation creates this constant confusion between what is right and what is wrong. Is my subjective experience right? Or should I believe the objective experience? Should I seek validation from others? And that keeps on changing. That keeps on changing from region to region, culture to culture. Some things are okay in one culture, other things are not okay in the other cultures. So what is the confusion here? The confusion is that the mind is restless. Mind, the fragmented mind, the separative mind, the mind which believes it is unwhole, it is limited, it is unworthy, it needs to attain something to become better, it needs to experience the real wisdom, the real insight, some deep philosophy, some intellectual stimulation in order to feel whole, in order to become whole. It mostly relies on feeling. But it cannot go beyond feeling and see that even feelings and emotions are arisings. They are not rooted in reality. They are all rooted in imagination. And the root of that imagination is the separation, is the entitification, me, which is a conditioned entity, a conceptual thought that is born out of memories and preconceptions. There is no reality, there is no concreteness to this me. It is a constantly changing image. There is no way of perfecting this image to become whole. That is a flawed idea. It is just to realize that this is an image. That itself brings peace and freedom, which comes only through acceptance of the interconnected link of opposites. Understanding that every good is relative good, every evil is relative evil, every truth is a relative truth, not an absolute truth. Every virtue accompanies vice, every happiness accompanies unhappiness. Whether it is job, relationship, money, world, anything, everything comes with the opposite. And the total understanding is the acceptance of both as they arise moment to moment. So I will finally read one more line. And now Maharaj here sums it up. He says, "You came here because you are in pain. And all I say is, wake up, know yourself, be yourself. The end of pain lies not in pleasure. When you realize that you are beyond both pain and pleasure, aloof and unassailable, then the pursuit of happiness ceases and the resultant sorrow too. What can be more clear than this? The pursuit of pleasure, the pursuit of a psychological state which is perceived as a solution to all the problems, is itself the problem. Because in reality, there is no problem when the whole cycle of pain and pleasure is accepted. Everything is seen as a happening. But the moment the vision gets skewed and the entity me, the separate self, arises, it clings to ideas, beliefs, and says that things should be a certain way for me to be happy. My life is not going according to my plans. And thank God that life is not going according to your plans. Because you see, just think of every plan that you made in your life. If it had come to fruition, what really would be your life? Because your consciousness at that point, when you wanted something in life, let's say, when you were younger, you may be wanting a relationship with a certain person. And in that moment, you thought that person is the perfect person. Or let's say that you wanted a certain career path when you were younger. You thought that you must be, let's say, a pilot or a doctor. But you did not become those things. You did not get the person that you wanted. Now you see that person with someone else, and you see them going through challenges, going through hardships, and you realize that maybe what happened for the best reason. But at that time, when you were totally identified with your limitation, and you were constantly in search of pleasure with the fulfillment that I must get this person or I must get this job, you were hell-bent on that idea. It was causing you constant struggle and pain. It was causing you constant suffering. Now, when you accept the cycle of pain and pleasure, you understand there is no perfect person. There is no perfect job. There is no perfection in anything. Life's beauty is its imperfection, not its perfection. Because imperfection makes life as we know possible. But when we try to seek beauty in perfection, that we must get the best person, best job, best this, best that, it is then that we start experiencing more and more pain, more and more suffering. So Maharaj says that you are trying to avoid pain, and this is true for most spiritual seekers. They're constantly trying to avoid pain. Because the spiritual seeking, it starts because of suffering, constant suffering, recognition that, oh, life is suffering, there is nobody I can call my own. So what do I do now? Who is mine? What will become of me? How will I live? Who will I rely on? You see? So all these questions are coming from the skewed vision of the separate self, which is completely identified with ideas. Ideas of how to avoid pain and how to pursue pleasure. The acceptance puts an end to this process, where Maharaj clearly he says here that the pursuit of happiness ceases the resultant sorrow also. And he also says, for pain aims at pleasure and pleasure ends in pain relentlessly. Till you don't have, you want. When you get it, it's not enough anymore. Isn't that the reality of our life? You want the best person, the best job, the best house, best according to whatever ideas you have in your mind. Best doesn't necessarily mean more money. Best means whatever idea you have in mind. What do you think suits you? What do you think you need in order to be happy? So, your whole outward movement, your whole pursuit of pleasure in the form of seeking actually brings more and more unhappiness, more and more sorrow. So, when this pursuit of pleasure is given up, the sorrow also dissolves. That is the whole concept here.